If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Today on Rethink Real Estate, we have Jay Conner. Jay is talking about how to raise private money. Now, one of the really interesting parts about this is that I've certainly had many people that I've witnessed over the years within the real estate business only sell residential real estate. There's a fair few people that have actually gone and segued through not only to just selling real estate, but then having their own flipping business on the side that gets restricted by having to raise capital. Jay talks about the process of doing so and how you can make it easy to build a community that is going to be your own private money group, which therefore you can lead the deals in. I think it's really valuable as realtors that ultimately you have an understanding of real estate marketplaces, that you can identify opportunities very clearly, and this can be another bucket. There's a fair few people that we know as well, and one of them that actually joined our podcast very early on in Rethink Real Estate, who've managed to segue out of selling real estate to just doing flipping, because they've been able to expand their private money network. Hopefully Jay's insights give you some idea of how this might be able to be another bucket for you, but also he's got some great resources that he makes available throughout the podcast as well. Thanks so much. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Jay, welcome to Rethink Real Estate.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. My lands, I'm so excited to be here, to be so passionate to talk about my most important topic on real estate, that being private money, because that's had more of an impact on our business than any other strategy.
Well, again, you've sort of already jumped into that first question that I was going to ask you, Jay, as I ask most guests, is sort of why should somebody hang around? Because private money, the reason that I had you on the podcast is because I honestly, when it comes to raising capital, it's probably one of the most, I'd like to think of myself as a pretty seasoned real estate professional, done a lot of deals, but asking others for capital is probably one of the things that I despise the most.
Right.
So if somebody's listening to the episode, why should they hang around from a strategy perspective?
Well, the reason people should hang around all the way to the end of this episode is because we're going to fix your problem, Ben. You've mentioned that your problem is you hate asking people for money. Well, guess what? In this episode, I'm going to share how I've raised over $8 million in private money, and I never asked for money. So stick around. You're going to learn how to raise a lot of private money without ever having to ask anybody for money.
So let's talk about your company, Jay. I think that the concept of which you obviously are offering to people from an investment perspective to, raising money to do real estate deals. I think that the episode and when we're recording it at the moment is very timely because the marketplaces seem to change a fair bit, because is that there is a great deal of more real estate opportunities than what there were previously because of how hot the marketplace was. Okay, so as we're coming into a time where you're probably going to see a little bit more opportunity for people out there, again, our primary audience is real estate agents and they're advising their clients, but a lot of those people are doing their own flips or their own real estate investing. I guess that from a timing perspective, where does this all start and how do we understand how you do it better?
Yes. Well, the reason right now is a great time to be attracting private money for real estate deals is because it reminds me of January 2009 when I first got involved with private money. You see, from 2003 until 2009, I relied on the local banks to fund my real estate deals, which were primarily single-family houses and has primarily been that over all these years. Well, the only thing that I knew to do, Ben, to get my deals funded was go to the local bank or institutional money, get on my hands and knees, put my hands underneath my chin and say, please fund my deal, and, pull up my skirt so they can look at my personal assets and look at my, financial statements. Well, that's the traditional way to borrow money. Well, all that changed for me in January 2009. The first 6 years, that plan worked okay. However, I called up my banker in January 2009. I had 2 houses under contract to invest in, and I learned like that my line of credit had been closed with no notice whatsoever. And so I knew I had to find a better way and a quicker way to fund my deals. So, of course, most of us remember what was going on in 2007, 8, and 9, and everything, drying up. And I said to my banker, I said, "What in the world? Why are you cutting off my line of credit?" He says, "Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now?" I said, "No, but you just gave me a financial crisis because I can't fund my deals." Well, I hung up the phone, and I knew I had to find a better and quicker way. Well, what was going on in 2009 was lenders had tightened up. They weren't lending money. Well, guess what's going on today? I mean, it's tight, right? Interest rates are high. It's hard to get qualified for a loan, but it's for a very, very different reason, for very, very different reasons. But the fact remains, lending is tight from institutional lenders. Well, the beautiful thing about raising private money, and let me be very clear, when I say private money, I'm talking about doing a business with individuals, human beings, not any kind of institutional money. And so when you're doing business with them, in this world, we get to make the rules. We set the interest rate. And, Ben, this was a very, very hard concept for me to get my mind wrapped around when I first started raising private money. Right. There's no selling, begging, or persuading. Instead of asking for money, you're actually teaching. In fact, I have what I call my teacher hat, which stands for private money teacher, right? You know what's interesting? I got 47 private lenders right now funding our deals. Not one of them, Ben, had ever heard of private money or self-directed IRAs, how they can use retirement funds to be a passive investor and fund real estate investing deals. They never heard about that until I put on my teacher hat and I started teaching. So one common question that I get from real estate investors or people that have never raised private money is they'll say, "How do I get over the fear of rejection?" Well, I answer that question with a question. How can you be rejected if you're not asking anybody for money? Yeah, fair. What's funny, Ben, I've never pitched a deal ever since I've been using private money. And let me go ahead and just pull the curtain back and reveal exactly how I do that and how other real estate investors are doing it when they learn how to do it my way. We separate. Now, what I'm getting ready to say is very, very important and critical. We separate the conversations of teaching somebody what private money is and how they can get high rates of return safely and securely. I call them teaching the program. Here's the interest rate I pay. Here's how you can get your money back in case of an emergency. Here's the length of the note. Here's the maximum loan to value. We teach that. Here's the program while not having a deal for them to fund. Desperation has got a smell to it. Yes. And if you're talking about a deal you need funded and your private lending opportunity, you're already sounding desperate without, the worst time to be raising money is when you need it for a deal.
That's fair. And that is probably the number one mistake that most people make is that they find the deal and then they try and find the money. It's got to work in the other way, considering the fact that it'll probably open your eyes up to a lot more opportunity or being a little bit more critical of the opportunity and not rushing into things if ultimately you've got the patience of the money there waiting.
You know what, Ben? I'm so glad you just said that because let me tell you what drives me stupid crazy. Every time I hear it, I want to go run into a brick wall. You'll have these educators and gurus on stage teaching new real estate investors. And here's what they say, quote unquote, "Oh, just go get the deal. Go get the property under contract. The money will show up." Or they'll say the money follows the deal. And you know what I want to say, Ben? I want to ask, where is the money going to show up? Is it just going to rain out of clouds? I mean, I just don't want to be under the stress of getting a house or deal under contract, and I have no idea where the funding is going to come from. So that's but
Jay, I think that there's another part of this as well that I think about. Reputational damage. I've got to be honest, I really dislike dealing with some investors because the reality is they come in, They try and secure the deal. They've got all this due diligence that they put on the contract or the contingencies that they put on it. And very few times do they actually execute. And then that investor locally starts getting a reputation of not being able to commit to a deal, okay, and trying to hold up the deal and wasting a great deal of people's times. I think that there's a reputational damage element of this that if you're shopping the deal after you've identified, it just creates a great deal of harm to your reputation if you're not moving through with those deals. Less people will come to you based on their inability to actually to know that your inability to commit to it.
Well, what you just shared is a fact of life. I mean, it's not going to take long for a real estate investor for realtors not to even work with them, not even want to take their offer. And because of private money, I've never put an offer on a property that was negotiated and now we're under contract that I wasn't able to close on, for goodness sakes, Yep. And, particularly if you're making offers on bank-owned properties, there's no bank-owned properties in the multiple listing service these days in our area anyway. But of course, you're going to need proof of funds for that, which I got the answer to that. But anyway, back to not asking, I want to share very quickly with your audience, Ben, this won't take but just a second. I want to share my exact script and my exact words that I say to one of my private lenders when I have a deal for them to fund. So they've already told me that they've got, say, $150,000 that they want, to invest. Right. And let's say that it's retirement funds and they're not happy with the returns they're getting at one of the large investment houses like Schwab or et cetera. So they've told them they got 150. Well, I'll introduce them to a self-directed IRA company where they can move those funds over and have it ready to go. Only takes about 2 weeks. Here is the exact script, and I call it the great news phone call. So let's pretend, Ben, that you're one of my new private lenders and you have got $150,000 that you've moved over to a self-directed IRA company. Here's the script. Hey, Ben, and we'll have a little chit chat. I say, Ben, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house and a property under contract here in Newport, North Carolina. The after repaired value is $200,000. Now, the funding required is $150,000, which matches what you have available. Closing is going to be next Thursday, so you'll need to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Wednesday. I'm going to have my attorney wire you email you the wiring instructions. End of conversation. The most stupid thing or question that I could ask you as my new private lender is, do you want to fund the deal? Of course you want to fund the deal. You've been waiting for the good news phone call. I told you I'd put your money to work for you. And particularly if you have moved your retirement funds over to a self-directed IRA that I recommended, you as my private lender are not making any money until I put your money to work. And of course, I'm not going to bring you a deal to fund that doesn't match the program that I taught you. It's that simple. Keep the conversation separate.
So from a logistic perspective, is that with the conversation that you're having with them around returns to the private money, what are some of the rates that you're offering people from a private money perspective at the moment? Does that vary? Does it vary based on the amount? Does it vary based on the availability? Like, how does all of that work?
It's been exactly the same, Ben, since I started. When I put my program together in February of 2009 as to what I was going to offer individual private lenders, it was 8%. It's still 8% today, all these years down the road. And, one question I've gotten recently over the past year is people will ask me, they'll say, Jay, how in the world can you be paying the same interest rate to your private lenders that you did in February of 2009, and you're paying the same thing today, and interest rates have shot up out of the roof? How are you doing that? I said, well, there's two answers to that question. First of all, the first answer is I make the rules, not the lender. So This is the program. This is the program. The second answer to that question is, well, you can go here in Morehead City, North Carolina to First Citizens Bank, and you can get a 12-month CD for right now in between 4.25% and 4.5%. Well, guess what? 8% is a whole lot more than that, almost double, right? So it's still a great return. All the notes are collateralized by the real estate. They're not loaning money out unsecured. It's still a win-win for everybody.
So then, as far as them loaning it out, so let's say that they do direct that money into us, the IRA that you made reference to. So let's just, for round numbers, let's say that I move $100,000 over. Now that you're only paying interest when that money is at use.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's an annual percentage rate. So let's say, for example, I borrow $100,000. If I use the $100,000 on that property for 12 months, they're going to earn $8,000. If they're using retirement funds, that's tax deferred or tax free, depending on the amount of retirement funds. Now, let's say that I use it for only 6 months, which most of my properties, I'm holding onto them for about 9 months because most of them are major rehabs that we're doing. But if I use it for 6 months, then they are going to earn half as much as 8,000. They'll earn 4,000. That's why I have in my promissory note that I promise to pay them a minimum of 6 months of interest in the unlikely event that I cash out in less than 6 months. I'm going to do a little risk here, a little advanced thing. I do a lot of substitution of collaterals.
Right.
So if I've used that money for a short period of time, and if I've got another property that immediately I'm purchasing, or if I have equity in the property and I can use smaller amounts of money for rehabbing, I'll keep their note open and they'll keep earning interest. And we will just substitute the collateral, the property that is collateralizing that note.
Right. So if they are one of so let's say it's a $500,000 property and they've only got $100,000, they have a percentage of that value of that property. How does that work?
So they're not an equity partner. So the private lender is not getting an equity share of the property.
Right.
All the deals we do are what's called one-offs.
Yep.
So you have a property and then you have one or two private lenders that are funding that property. So each private lender has got their own promissory note, got their own deed of trust or mortgage. So they're each earning interest, and I pay or accrue interest only. And then when we cash out of the property, if I don't substitute the collateral, they'll get all their principal loan amount paid back when we cash out.
Right. So this is all done based off a promissory note?
Yes.
Okay. So in that being said, is that so let's say that somebody wants to start learning how to do this. Obviously they can reach out to you and you've got a program that is available to them. Do you want to talk to us a little bit more about that? Because I'm assuming that then you've got promissory notes in there. You've got some of the documentation that could get people started with this.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited about my brand new training that I just launched. It's called the Private Money Challenge. Money Challenge, the 7-day Private Money Challenge. And what that is, it's a series of 7 videos that are delivered into your email inbox, one a day. And it gives a great foundational training and introduction to what private money is and how it works. Each video that I've recorded is only 15 to 20 minutes long. So it's not going to take much time at all to consume it. And I keep it very, very simple to understand. And yes, it does have the documents. So when you enroll in Private Money Challenge, you immediately receive the first video training in your email inbox. And then the next 6 days in a row at 9 a.m. Eastern time, you'll receive each subsequent training. So it's very easy to come enroll. And I tell you what, not only will you learn how to raise private money, but we'll have a lot of fun too. I'm right there on the video with you, engaging with you, giving you a little bit of homework. Go to www.privatemoneychallenge.com, privatemoneychallenge.com, and you'll come right in there and get that first video right away.
Well, Jay, we'll make sure that we link that below as well. But I think that is just from a logistic perspective as well. I'm thinking about this out loud is that how much money would you encourage somebody to sort of try and raise prior to them going and looking for deals? I'm so glad you asked
that, Ben. In fact, I've been a guest on over 800 podcasts, and nobody's ever asked me that question till right now. So it depends on your market. It depends on your average price point, your average after repaired value. So guess what? On day number 3 of day number 7 in the Private Money Challenge, I'm doing a 20-minute video, and I actually have a very simple document for you to fill out, and I walk you through exactly how much private money you need to raise.
Right. Okay.
It's going to be dependent on how many deals you're projecting to do a year,
Right.
what your average after repaired value of a house is going to be. And I've got a very simple formula. I mean, I've got some members in my community that have raised $2.5–3 million for their annual usage, and other people are getting it done with less than $500,000. So
okay,
depends on your market.
And then as far as it's probably outside, it's outside of the money raise element, but the management of the flipping side of things, like the rehab side of things and having a crew that is available, because I think that that's going to be indicative of the success that most people have, because you can do with larger flipping companies, a lot of those people can do thinner margin deals just to keep their guys working so that they're available to the next ones. Whereas if you're only doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, having the right crew availability is probably one of the downsides to doing a smaller volume. How do you manage that?
Yes. So I started out with my own crew, and I still have my own crew. I've got a project manager. We can do 2 houses simultaneously. But then I have 2 other general contractors that I have a relationship with, and each of them can be having 3 houses going simultaneously. So as a result, I can be having 10 or more houses going. But you bring up a really, really good point, Ben, and I want to make this point. Private money is not only for the rehabbing, fix and flip business. Private money, don't miss this. Private money is you're going to use private money when the seller, no matter if it's in the multiple listing service or an off-market deal, when the seller requires all the cash, that's when you use private money, regardless of the condition of the property.
Right. Understood. Where do you guys get most deal flow from? Like, I know that we're speaking to a real estate community that could obviously reach out to you and give you some deal flow within markets you're interested in. But I guess that for them being agents, where would they look for off-market opportunities, or where? How do they look at this from a perspective of maybe it's a seller that they currently have?
Sure. So I'm in a small market here. Only 40,000 people is my target market. So I have multiple marketing channels and funnels bringing me deals. So obviously here in my market, there's no deals to buy in the multiple listing service. By the way, I'm not a realtor on purpose, but I've been working with the same 2 realtors for 19 years.
Understood. Okay.
One here in Carteret County, one in Craven County. We have a beautiful working relationship. So I'm going to answer your question, and then I'll quickly say, how do I work with my realtors and what's our relationship look like as far as making money and who does what? So I get a lot of leads. Of course, all my leads are off market for sale by owners. And so Google pay per lead, 5 different companies are providing me leads, and I'll share them with you right now. LibertyLeads.com, FastHomeOffers.com, MotivatedSellers.com, NeedToSellMyHouseFast.com, and ZoloLeads.com. So I have that. So those are people that are individuals that are searching on Google.
And you pay for those subscriptions? Do you pay for those subscriptions, or do you cut them into a percentage? Okay.
By the lead. So, depending on the provider, that's how, most of them I'm paying around $150 per lead.
Understood.
But I only need 7 leads to buy a house.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
So those are our top funnels coming in right now, that anybody else, can plug into. And so the way I work with my realtors is these are for sale by owners. So Chris and Tracy, my 2 realtors I've been with for 19 years, if it looks like there's a deal there, they'll do all the research. They'll do the comps. They'll send me and my acquisitionist, well, here's what I think based on comps, the after repaired value on this property will be after you make it absolutely beautiful. And of course, both of my realtors know what I'm going to do because we've been working together for 19 years. Yes, I'm going to do granite countertops. I'm going to do LVP. I'm not just going to be doing lipstick and paint. So they'll send us the after repaired value. I use their figures, my realtors' figures, to calculate my maximum allowable offer when I'm paying all cash. And so any deal that I buy, any house property I buy that my realtors did research on, which is all of them, then of course, who's going to get the listing when I go to sell it? Of course, Chris or Tracy is going to get the listing every time because they did the research on it before I bought it. And then, of course, if there's any property in the multiple listing service that I'm interested in, well, who's going to make the offer for me? It's not. I'm not going to the listing agent. It's either going to be Chris, my relationship, or Tracy, my relationship, that's going to make all my offers.
Right. Well, again, I think that I think the infrastructure for somebody to actually start doing all of this, probably the rehabbing and having the teams available is definitely one element of it, but I think that's very solvable with the relationships that agents or people have at this point. It's actually the raising of liquidity, and people think that it needs to be their own money that they need to do it with or whatever it may be, that often stops most people. So I think that this is an opportunity for them to build another department of their business. If we're speaking to the real estate community, yes, they sell real estate, yes, they do all of that, but when there's a good opportunity, instead of farming it out to an investor, there's an opportunity for them to do it themselves because they know it better. Obviously, the commissional element side of it is a saving for them as well. There's many, many different ways. So encouraging them to reach out to you, Jay, and check that out a little bit further. But I guess as we round out the episode, one of the things we like to leave the community with that I ask most guests is sort of a little bit of either a life hack, favorite podcasts, favorite books, things that have influenced you, over the number of years that you've been doing what you're doing. Anything or any pearls of wisdom that you can leave us with different resources.
Absolutely. Lead everything that you do with a servant's heart, looking for a way to lead with value first. How can you give? How can you give first and bring value? So I was very blessed to have the co-author on my podcast, which is Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. Raising Private Money. It's on all the platforms. Anyway, Bob Berg is the co-author of The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver, and it's a wonderful book. It's short, it's in parable form, but it'll really open your eyes as to how having a servant's heart and just leading with value is through the law of reciprocity. What goes around comes around. My hero, one of my heroes, Zig Ziglar, that I got to meet 2 times before he passed away. You know what he said? You help enough other people get what they want, you don't have to worry about getting what you want. I highly encourage you, get the book, The Go-Giver.
Wonderful. Jay, thank you so much for the insight that you've given us. No doubt that the audience will reach out further because the information is very valuable. But thanks again for being on Rethink Real Estate.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide. And download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money